I solemnly swear that I am up to no good.
Messrs. Mooney, Wormtail, Padfoot and Prongs are proud to present the Marauder's Map.
If you succeed tonight, more than one innocent life may be spared.
Expecto Patronum!
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, we're back again for another episode of Hogwarts, a Pod, and we're doing Chapter 8, Flight of the Fat Lady. Great title. Anna's back again.
Hello, hello.
We did not kill each other over the last chapter we tried.
I might still kill him, guys.
Anna particularly requested this chapter.
I did. Mostly because of Lupin. I just love Lupin. I'm a big Lupin fangirl.
You're not the only one. Lupin is quite popular, we find out.
Yeah.
Despite his shabby appearance, which most people judged him on early, he's gaining respect of students very quickly.
Well, I don't think it's hard for him to do.
He's doing it with a combination of like knowing his stuff, having a little bit of a quick wit that can like match some of the students a little bit, and also having this kind of like meh, like whatever man kind of attitude that I think they kind of respect.
I feel like they kind of think he's like pretty cool, even though he dresses all shabby. They weren't expecting him to be like cool and like shoving gum down Peeves' nose.
Right. Yeah, and I think they like his lessons too. It's like the lessons are, let's imagine an alternate universe where Lockhart was a competent teacher. And the pixie lesson went much better than it did. It's an alternate universe.
I can't even imagine.
I know,
Okay.
it's hard to imagine. But in that alternate universe, like that's what Lupin's lessons have kind of been. It's like he introduces red caps and kappas. Red caps being...
They sound super creepy.
They
But,
are.
like, I want to learn about them.
They're murderous, goblin-like creatures that lurk where blood has been shed. That's aggressive.
Yeah, it is.
And then kappas are essentially like water monkeys, so for lack of a better. And it's a question I had with Hagrid and how he got like however many hippogriffs he did. And how does Lupin get red caps? How does he get kappas? How does he get the Grindylow that we see later? He got them delivered,
Delivery of it.
which is fascinating to me.
Yeah, is there like a magical creature zoo? Oh my god, do you think Newt rents out from his suitcase?
Oh, that'd be a great business plan.
Yeah.
If he could just like
I
get
can't
academic.
really see. Well, yeah, academic.
It would be purely like academic contracts with like Hogwarts.
You'd have to like apply
or-
to Newt, and he'd approve you.
Yeah.
As, like, a animal.
You'd have to be a school, I would assume, for this. But yeah, it's a delivery system. I'm not exactly sure how that works, and it's just kind of an offhand detail that I kind of want to know more about. But anyway, but those are the kind of lessons that Lupin has, where I think we can all agree Redcap's not exactly the most dangerous creature, but also not innocent. Like, if this thing lurks where blood is shed...
I was gonna say, I think that's a pretty big assumption that it couldn't be.
Well, I mean, it's not like... I'm trying to think of other like beasts that we've seen in Fantastic Beasts that are like clearly they are big and aggressive, and how can you exactly like manage one on your own kind of thing? But still, it's an aggressive step up, and I think that's part of also the reason that students are like, "Ooh, this thing's actually got like a bite to it," for lack of a better phrasing. So I think they kind of respect that too. And again, the way he teaches, I think, melds. Kind of merges well with this of like, here's what it is, here's things you should know about it, here's how you would defeat it if you were to encounter it kind of thing. I think it's just a really well done kind of structure. We're going to get into a lot of Harry and Lupin's conversation in the spoilers, but Harry ends up walking around as everyone else in his class is seemingly gone to Hogsmeade.
Poor Harry.
And he's just kind of wandering around, doesn't want to talk to Colin, doesn't want to hang out with Colin's friends and be essentially idolized. So he walks around the castle, gets yelled at by Filch, and ends up in Lupin's classroom. Which is generally, that's a day at Hogwarts.
I just love that scene so much. It's such a cute little scene between the two of them. Another good teacher moment. I feel like it's something Elizabeth would Elizabeth would do if she saw one of her
Oh,
students
yeah.
wandering.
Oh,
in the
I'm sure.
hallways.
I'm sure she's had a conversation or two, like after class or before class. There are interesting things to note of that conversation without getting into spoilers too much. We've seen Snape kind of glare and look at Lupin with some disdain. Lupin treats him very respectfully because during this conversation, Snape actually walks in with a steaming mug for Lupin, which also seems odd, which it is, but we'll get to that later. And Lupin treats him very respectfully. Thank you very much. And he says some very kind things about Snape to Harry when Harry's like, don't drink that, what are you doing? And then just spurts out like random...
Because like Lupin is a grown adult
Yes.
professional.
Harry is of the mindset that Snape is poisoning Lupin. Which is, I think Elizabeth brought up that my name for Harry in the third book should be like first year stupid, second year dumb.
Yeah.
She brought up third year thick, so I might go with third
No,
year thick.
I like
I know,
that.
it was very
That's
good, so I think I'm going to go with it. But this is like an example of Harry being like third year thick of life.
That's just Harry being Harry.
The other thing that Harry notes from this conversation with Lupin is that Lupin very freely, without hesitation, says the name Lord Voldemort.
Yes.
He takes note of that and is like, huh. And he did it twice.
Well, I didn't really realize ever. I had forgotten they make a point of stating in the chapter that Harry realizes he's the first person other than Dumbledore and himself to use his name freely.
And I want to talk to you about that more in the spoilers section. There's a lot of this conversation that we'll get to in the spoilers. But yeah, before we get on, I'm not going to dwell on it because we had a whole episode about it. Last episode.
We got into a fight again after the episode, you guys.
We did. It was heated again, and we had to stop, and we had to put a fan on because we were both hot-headed. It was a whole thing. It was aggressive. We're fine. We're good. Again, Anna's
Still
back.
friends.
We're all right. We're it's all good. But so I'll briefly skip over this. But there was a rundown that Harry had of the professors really quick and of the students' perceptions of them. And Trelawney was mostly split. There are some supporters of Trelawney in the class.
I think he refers to them as devotees.
Yes. Because Harry's not biased at all in any way, shapes, or forms in the narration that he gives us.
No.
But no, not at all. But yeah, there are some supporters of Trelawney and there are some not. And the thing that comes up is they stumble on Lavender, who's crying, and Parvati is consoling her. And they find out that her baby rabbit has died, and it just so happens to be Friday the 16th of October, which is what...
Just so happens. Just so happens. You used it yourself. It's a complete coincidence. Sorry.
Which is the thing that Trelawney predicted that on the 16th of October...
That is not the thing. She said the thing you would be dreading.
Yes.
I'm with Hermione on this. Sorry, continue.
Do you have a window to Lavender's soul?
Yes.
Yeah, so they have a whole discussion on Lavender and that prediction, and yes, Hermione does not take it well and keeps questioning it and keeps poking, which does not make Lavender feel better about the whole situation. To which Ron says, don't worry, Lavender, she hates other people's pets, which makes Hermione very upset.
Such a Ron moment.
It is a
I
great
love
Ron moment.
Weasley.
It's a good Ron jab at Hermione, which Hermione doesn't really have a great answer for, but then treats
Well, they got interrupted.
Ron.
They were glaring at each other when something happened.
Well, Ron was upset with Hermione before this,
Yes.
and Hermione was trying to make it better, and then that Ron comment did not make that better, and then now they're just not speaking to each other for a little bit of time.
It's just Ron and Hermione.
Crookshanks did try to kill Scabbers again, which Ron was not happy. But later on in the chapter, we got another Peeves moment. And I had to quote him on this, because it's a very Peeves thing. Oh, yes, Professor Head, when referring to Dumbledore. And Dumbledore just takes it in stride, and it's great. How many people in the world do you think would be able to pull off with a straight face calling Dumbledore Professor Head?
One, and his name is Peeves.
Agreed. Look, we agree. Everybody agrees. It's great. I laughed out loud. I'm like, really? That's awesome. And then we get a big bombshell at the end. So everybody's coming back to the common room, and there's a big hold up, and Percy gets all upset. He's like, "Oh,
I'm head boy."
yes, head boy." Which of the hierarchy here, so he's there assessing the situation. He doesn't like order the prefects to go like do something. He's just like somebody
threw out the
randomly.
Oh. Well, maybe he didn't have a prefect in sight.
Maybe, but I don't know. I just thought there'd be the 2 prefects from Gryffindor to be somewhere in the vicinity, but anyway. But yeah, he throws out that.
Making out in the dungeon like him and Penelope.
Maybe. So they're all crowding around the portrait, and the reason the portrait's not opening is because the fat lady's not there, and there are like huge gash marks in the portrait itself. And Peeves just drops this massive bombshell in a very Peeves way of, very violent, very aggressive, that Sirius Black. Cut.
So another great cliffhanger.
Hard cut, which...
Oh, yeah.
I gotta admit, I'm reading this in a different way, as we've mentioned, and I'm reading it more analytically, and it's taking me longer to read these chapters because I'm taking notes and I'm, trying to do this for the podcast. So I haven't had as many of those reactions of like, oh, I gotta flip another page because now it's work in a way. But I gotta say, he drops a Sirius Black bombshell. I'm like, I kind of want to keep reading. So well done, J.K. on that. Another great bombshell end of a chapter. So. That's kind of a chapter in a nutshell. We have big spoilers to talk about.
Oh, wait! I do want to point out.
Uh-oh.
Did you realize and think about it and remember our conversation about like the room where it happens from Chamber of Secrets with like the big 3 professors?
Yes.
That was Dumbledore.
Oh, yes,
Lupin
you're right.
wants to join.
You're right.
This made me happy.
This is a true formidable 4.
Yes.
Ooh, I like that. Formidable 4. I like that. We're going with it. The formidable 4 of Dumbledore, McGonagall, Snape, and Lupin. That's 4 people that I wouldn't want to mess with.
I would very much go into battle.
They would cover a lot of different bases for you in a battle. That I like that. Formidable 4 is solid. I'm very happy with myself. But no, you're right. That's a great point to bring up. The 4 of them coming, and I had that same thought of like them 4 showing up, and you're like, oh, we're good. Like, we got this covered. Like, whatever is happening right now, I feel safe in these 4, like, people's abilities to solve whatever needs to be done. But yeah, good catch. Good call before we head to spoilers. Are we ready to head to spoilers?
Oh, I think so.
Cool. We'll end it here. Please come back because we have a lot of good stuff to talk about in the spoilers. We have Harry and Lupin's discussion. I have a point about Snape and Lupin that confused Anna, which I hope to...
I don't know that it confused me. It upset me a little bit. Shocker.
It's almost as if I never say anything. Again, you'll get her ridiculing me in this break sound, and we'll go from there. We'll be back with spoilers.
You foul, loathsome, evil little cockroach!
All right, so we're back with the spoiler section of Chapter 8, Flight of the Fat Lady, and we're just going to go with more of Anna's hatred toward me here. So I made the note, it's not really told specifically in this chapter. It's not said out loud, but it's just the vibe I'm getting from Snape, is when he, and this gets into a little bit of our Lupin Snape background, but when he was staring loathingly at Lupin, I think he's remembering a lot of their schoolhood.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Their childhood, where admittedly it was mostly James and Sirius torturing him. It wasn't as much Lupin, but still.
I would make the argument that Snape tortured Lupin in their schoolhood more than Lupin ever did anything to him.
But I imagine Snape sees Lupin and is just transported back to those memories.
Because Lupin also didn't stand up for him.
Correct.
Yeah.
So there's history there, which you can kind of dive into a little bit. But I think in this chapter specifically, Snape being Snape, who has insecurities and things that go back to his childhood, which Lupin was a part of, and then he hears that Neville turned him into his grandmother in Lupin's first lesson with them. I think Snape, in his mind, goes to, oh, this is just another form of James, Sirius, and Lupin, and whatever, just continuing on from those flashbacks to his memories. I'm not saying it's true, and I'm not saying it's valid. I'm saying in Snape's head, he could view it as such.
Well, no, and I'm sure that is how he views it. And I think it even is like a little bit left over. Like, Remus earned his spot in the Marauders. Like, there is a little bit of a prankster.
He's not a saint.
In Remus Lupin. So I think the idea of putting anybody into a dress and vulture hat and big red bag, I think would appeal to him and make him laugh. It's not just about him trying to bully Snape.
I mean, it was kind of his suggestion.
Well, right. But, like,
So,
I think that's just
not
him
that Snape necessarily even knows that fact.
himself. That's his little bit of personality. It's not just because it's Snape. It probably
But
makes him
to
laugh
Snape,
a little.
that's a
Right.
personal insult to him.
But what also I think Snape should have done a little self-reflecting on, if he chooses to focus on that and Remus seeing it as Lupin continuing on bullying him in the footsteps of James and Sirius.
Sure.
He hasn't grown up at all. I mean, I know that's always my point, but like, why isn't he instead focusing on the fact like, oh, you know what? Maybe it's an issue that one of my students' bogarts turned into me.
Sure. I think you bring up an interesting point about the not growing up part of it, because it's the analogy that I have for you that I think you might
ask you about this. Yeah.
Yeah. So, people that we grew up with in grade school or high school who didn't treat us particularly well then, maybe said a disparaging comment, made fun of us, whatever it may be. You might still remember that. They might not.
Yeah, sure.
You might still remember that because it did whatever damage. Made you feel embarrassed, made you angry, made you whatever, made you sad, whatever. You might still remember that years later, even though that person has long forgotten that moment.
Right.
And when you see that person again, at a job setting or out in the real world, they might come up to you having long forgotten that moment and be like, oh, Dan, how are you doing? Like, what's life like? What are you doing now? And being like cordial and adult and mature. And I don't think look, I'm just going to be honest. Even me, myself, there's still that moment of like, dude, like you did this thing that bothered me a long time ago. And now you're just coming up to me like, hey, bro, like, what up? You do have to take a conscious step back and be like, that was however long ago. I'm different. That person's different. We've both grown up, matured, gotten jobs, had kids, gotten married, whatever that's changed us for the better or for the worse, whatever the scenario is. But it does take a second to be like, because you have that memory that they don't have necessarily.
Well, and you don't think Lupin has to go through that same thing? I mean, you made a point in
I'm just
the
trying
spoiler
to
section saying like he was very cordial and respectful to Snape. Snape, like, found out that he was a werewolf when they were kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he knows something really personal about Lupin. Lupin could have almost killed him because Snape was so obsessed with finding out, like, stuff about him. You don't think, like, I think that's something really big for Lupin to try and overcome. But
sure.
Lupin is sitting there, he's drinking this potion that Snape is preparing for him.
Which Snape has I get that Dumbledore has set this job on him, but Snape is doing it, and he's doing it well.
Right. And that's, kudos to him for doing that. I'll
Lupin,
respect that.
Lupin points it out as like, this is not an easy potion to make.
Right.
Most potion makers would not even try or attempt to do this. So what he's doing is really a real big favor to me.
Right.
Yeah. So there is an element to both what we're saying.
There is, right.
He does need to grow up and get past issues.
Well, I think
But
I
also,
said back in, like, Sorcerer's Stone at some point that Snape could have done with some counseling.
Yes, that would have helped. But as we've also established, counseling does not seem to exist in the wizarding world.
That is for sure.
So we can't agree on that very, very specifically. But I think that's essentially it. Is like, in some ways he has grown up because he's doing this and he's doing it well. But it is hard for him to move on from some of that. And being in a school where he sees kids doing the same things constantly, maybe it's hard for him to move on because he's in that setting constantly. I don't know. I don't know.
I guess I'll just always have so much more sympathy for Lupin and, like, the fact that he was, he wasn't always a werewolf.
Well, his trek was harder for sure. Yeah.
And so that,
Yeah.
but like Lupin is able to rise above, and the fact that Snape is just loving to embroil himself in that pettiness of, high school age drama.
Yeah, I think
You have a point. I'm not trying to dismiss your point
No.
at all, because we've all got that person from when we were that age.
I'm the first person to say Snape has flaws, many of which we saw in the previous chapter where he's just going after Neville in a malicious way. No one's defending that. No one. In this particular circumstance with him and Lupin, there's some history there that, as you put it, he probably does need to actually work through that.
Yes.
But that doesn't seem...
He doesn't seem interested in it.
And honestly, those avenues don't seem to exist in this world that we know of. So it's deeper than just the surface level, I guess, is what we're talking about. But yes to both of us? I don't know. Anyway, so Lupin and Harry. And I brought it up when they were on the Hogwarts Express in the Dementor chapter of Lupin, whether he's feigning sleep and he's actually awake, or whether he's truly tired and asleep. Either way, he eventually becomes aware that he's sharing a compartment with Harry Potter. And he plays it so coolly that, there's so many layers to that. And so many. And he plays it like nothing. It's a testament to who he is. But you get a little bit of it here. And again, Lupin plays it very coolly. He's just sitting here with one of his best friend's children. Given how that friendship ended with the death of James and Lily, who Lupin was close with as well.
And Peter, and essentially Sirius.
No, there's a lot of depth to Lupin's emotions sitting across from Harry and having this conversation. And I love how he's playing it, of just sitting there calmly, listening to whatever Harry says, whether it's logical, emotional, or just absolutely crazy. He just sits there, raises his eyebrows occasionally, and goes, "Oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting take. That's fascinating. Okay." And just having this conversation with a kid who means so much to you, presumably.
Yeah.
So.
And it is hard to, and he has, he does have some takes. It's a very serious conversation, bringing up Voldemort and the Dementors. And, can you imagine how much of James he must see in him, even in just this small conversation over tea?
Well, the looks alone would be... And it's not, and again, this is not just people seeing Harry and being like, "Oh, you generally resemble your dad." This is someone who knew
his mannerisms,
knew James at the same age and spent significant time with James at the same age. So he's, we talk about Sirius seeing James and Harry. You can't say that Lupin doesn't either. It's got to be there.
Of course not.
They react to it
Lupin
differently.
clearly does a better job, in my opinion, of separating the two. I think it goes back to my point of when I was saying why I think Lupin is the best teacher in the series, is that he really listens to what people say to him. So I think the reason I love this conversation so much is, to me, this conversation, okay, great, he proved himself and saved Harry on the train and saw Harry for the first time and saw his best friend, I'm sure, on the train. But this is where I think starts their relationship, moving on, Harry respecting his magical abilities, moving beyond a good teacher. This is where they start building the blocks for their friendship and the fact that Harry eventually becomes godfather to his child.
I want to pose a question to you that I posed to Elizabeth of Lupin's hiring. When do you think Lupin was hired? Do you think it was pre or post Black escaping from Azkaban?
Interesting.
Do you think Dumbledore hears of Sirius Black's escape and goes, maybe our Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, maybe...
It would behoove us to have...
someone who knows the situation a little bit more intimately than some random. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I do know what you're saying. I've always more thought of it as a situation where, like, I kind of always viewed it as Lupin had gotten to the point where he was so desperate for a job, he might have reached out to Dumbledore.
And vice versa. Dumbledore desperate to fill it.
Right.
And Dumbledore assumes at this point.
It's an intriguing thought. It's very Dumbledore to hire on Lupin once Sirius Black escapes. I do like that idea.
If you're Dumbledore.
And that would make sense, too, for why he rode the train in. It would be a late hiring.
I like it. It's Dumbledore in a couple of different ways. It's Dumbledore in that he solves multiple problems at once. He solves his Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. He potentially has a very intriguing between Harry and Sirius, should it come to that, if it comes to that, or someone to kind of help explain or mitigate the relationship there, like counseling him on like, hey, is there he kept saying he's at Hogwarts. You know what that might be? Like,
well, I think he ended up being very disappointed if he was looking for those types of tidbits from Lupin, because obviously Lupin didn't say a word about most of the insider knowledge he had about Sirius Black until it was too late.
Sure. Also, Dumbledore carries with him a different weight in those conversations. So you don't know. Those conversations didn't officially, quote unquote, happen. So we don't know. But I'm just playing around.
I like it.
And obviously it solves another problem of Lupin is also competent. He's smart. He knows the school. He knows what it takes to be successful at Hogwarts. So he fills in a competent, like, hey, the kids are actually getting a good teacher. Like, win, 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 all the way around, whichever way you slice it. So it's like, it just occurred to me, like, Sirius Black escapes from prison, and then all of a sudden one of his childhood buddies just so happens to get a job at... I wonder if Dumbledore had some ulterior motives here.
This, I feel like, is a good segue for me, too, to ask you another what-if question.
I love what-if questions. Hit me.
So, at one point in the conversation, Harry has the thought to himself about bringing up to Lupin the fact that he saw the giant black dog on Magnolia Crescent. Mm-hmm. What if Harry had actually told him in that moment about that dog? Like, you proposed that, like, maybe Dumbledore hired Lupin on after Sirius Black escaped. Like, what do we think would have happened if Lupin's going to view that black dog, obviously, in the way Harry would not view it?
Well, in my mind, there's two different routes to take, and one of those routes then splits. So, the one route is Lupin immediately recognizes that Sirius Black has a connection to the Potters. He has a connection potentially to Harry being the godfather. Potentially. He is the godfather of Harry. So there's that connection. He's been saying he's at Hogwarts. Like, maybe Lupin's putting dots together. So maybe he's like, that was it. Black was definitely that dog in the alleyway. The other route is Lupin can dismiss it as like, well, that could have been just any dog.
I don't see Lupin doing that.
He could have just dismissed it as, well, again, it goes back to like Lupin being dismissive of some of Harry's ideas. In this setting, I think you play it just as he did, of just like, so even if Lupin did recognize it, even if he did, there's the branch of doing exactly what I just said, him going to like Dumbledore and being like, oh my gosh, did you know this? Or there's the branch of Lupin just sitting there going, okay, that's really interesting. That's an interesting thought there, Harry. And just playing it, like recognizing it, but just playing it so cool, like he's been doing this entire time, of just like, interesting. Okay.
I'm not even more thinking of like the what if, how he reacts to Harry telling him. I'm thinking, like, in my mind, he hears that from Harry. He knows in his mind, he's the only living person who knows that Sirius Black is an animagus.
Can I just ask you a question that's kind of been bothering me?
Sure.
And you might have an answer that, like, a light bulb clicks off in my head that makes it settle better with me.
Okay.
You have all these people that have known Sirius Black in different forms or fashions very closely or just tangentially or just kind of in passing, right? You assume Molly knows of Sirius, Molly Weasley. Mm-hmm. Maybe, again, not maybe intimately, but knows of him.
She knows of him, but she
Yeah.
doesn't know him personally.
That's
yet.
fine. That's fine. You have Lupin, who knows him intimately. You have Dumbledore, who knows of Sirius on a pretty solid level. You have McGonagall, other people that have taught him. You get people that know Sirius Black and generally what he's about. No one raises a question as to, oh yeah, Sirius Black blew up a street with like 13 people. That makes sense. Like, no one? It bothers me a little bit.
Like you said, those people know Sirius Black. I mean, Lupin knew him intimately. Dumbledore knew him pretty darn well. McGonagall knew him pretty darn well. And what is the overriding story around
There's
Sirius
a difference
Black?
between a
That
prankster.
James Potter was his best friend. I'm sorry. I'm going to go there. James Potter
Hold on.
was the Steve Rogers
That's a tick.
to Sirius Black's Bucky Barnes. All right?
Do I make a separate note for Captain America?
This would be my second mention of Steve Rogers throughout the podcast. It's fine. No, like, I'm just saying, like, I think they know Sirius Black finds out that he's one of their, other best friends intimately betrayed and led to the death of the most important person in his life. Sirius Black's going to go after that person.
So, no. So there's...
Well, I guess no. Okay, my reasoning is knowing the truth. So you're saying everybody... I see, I don't think...
Everybody except Sirius Black is...
Everybody thinks
a
that
mass
he just
murderer.
went up and blew the street up and betrayed his best friend. Yeah.
None of them know that Sirius was anti his family, anti Slytherin. He fought for the order. Doesn't that seem like a weird...
Somebody was feeding information from within the order. I mean, think about it. This is like Cold War. This is like World War II secret keeping. Like, the order is being picked off one by one.
Sure.
Almost everybody you know is dead. You know there's somebody inside. It could be anybody. So I think the level of trust, no matter how well you know a person, I think at that point, I mean, think about it. Sirius thought that Remus was the spy. That's why Sirius didn't tell Remus that it was Peter who's the secret keeper.
I don't know. Nothing sits well. I get what you're saying, because that's true. And
if anything, to me,
the suspicions were at high levels.
Be same thing. All those people knew Peter Pettigrew.
I will give you this, because it's a very valid point that you brought up, of the atmosphere at that time was suspicion heavy. No one can trust anyone. We see bits of that later, Battle of Hogwarts-esque era.
Even coming back from the Seven Potters.
Yeah. So, I mean, that is true, and I can give you that. I just feel like...
I think you're missing the point. Like, Dumbledore actually heard from James Potter's lips that Sirius Black was going to be the secret keeper. As far as anyone was concerned, literally the only person who could have betrayed the Potters was Sirius Black. As far as anybody knew, he was the only person who knew their location.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you beat that logic that he had to have been the one who turned?
I guess my question, if I were those characters, would be, did Sirius turn? Or was he Imperious? Or was he... Because so many other people around that era that did do bad things of their own volition got off by saying, I was Imperious, or I was Jinx.
When a man is found laughing in the middle of a blown apart street.
Sirius didn't do himself any favors. I'll give you that.
And he was never given a trial. Maybe if he was given a trial where he could have put out all this information, maybe people who knew him would have believed him, would have better come to his defense, but he was never given a chance to tell his side of it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Barty Crouch.
I don't know. It's just kind of not settled well with me. I don't know. Anyway, we can change subjects, because there's one big thing that I did want to talk about, and that's Lupin being able to so casually say the name Lord Voldemort. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think he's already proven himself. He is a very strong wizard. He's very capable. He's a Gryffindor, so he's very brave.
He does have that line about...
know of the Order of the Phoenix at this point yet, but, we're in the spoiler section. We know he was a member of the First Order of the Phoenix.
He does have that line about Harry being wise for only fearing fear, which I guess that's maybe part of it.
Like, I think he just gives off an aura. He wasn't scared of the Dementor. He immediately, raised to that occasion. He's able to produce a very strong Patronus. Like, he just gives off this aura of calm strength. So to me, that it's very similar to Dumbledore, in my opinion. Like, he doesn't get, yes, eventually he gets frazzled. But so far, he just always remains very even-keeled. He takes what is presented to him. Eventually he just is the first one to jump into the fight. He is welcomed into the Formidable Four,
I love that name.
So why would he be scared? Like, he just gives off, he says, like you just said, the line of, "You're very wise, only thing to fear is fear itself." So maybe he doesn't want to instill more fear by calling him "He who must not be named."
So he's
not going to call him the Dark Lord. Snape.
Which is the opposite of it. I guess not completely, because you could be calling him Tom Riddle, but Dumbledore pulls that trump card.
But I don't think it would make sense for him to call him Tom Riddle.
No, it probably would.
Tom Riddle.
Yeah, you're right. But no, I get the whole idea. Doesn't Dumbledore say in Sorcerer's Stone that fear of the name increases fear of the thing itself?
Yes.
So, Lupin can just be a hardcore subscriber to that. I don't think, most people that cringe, Lupin lost friends. Lupin lost a lot during that war and after the war. And I don't think, as capable as he is as a wizard, he's not Dumbledore that can go toe-to-toe with Voldy full strength.
For all we know, he was there when Lily and James was going toe-to-toe with him. Let's think about the people we know who call Voldemort by name. All right, it's Dumbledore, Sirius, Lupin, Moody.
Moody's just a...
they're four of the only surviving members. If Snape wasn't, actually obsessed with dark arts, if he was, an original member of the Order of the Phoenix, I think he would call Voldemort.
I feel like he has a whole different fear of Voldy being so close to him for so long. Well,
that's what I'm saying. If that portion of Snape never happened,
sure.
Snape was just a member of the Order of the Phoenix to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's calling him "He who must not be named." He's calling
probably
him Voldemort.
Yeah.
I think it just takes a certain type of person.
You've seen the worst of it, so...
I've been in the thick of the war.
I've lost so much already.
Right.
What is this, really? It's fair. It's fair. It's just something that...
The only weak link in that argument would be McGonagall. And why she doesn't call him Voldemort.
She fears him quite a bit, so...
Because she was in the Order of the Phoenix. Does Aberforth call him Voldemort?
See,
Do we know?
That I'm not sure. I think he does call him Lord Voldemort. I want to say he does. He strikes me very similar to Moody, of just not giving a care one way or the other, and just being I'm going to call you whatever I want to call you, and you're going to deal with. Okay. Just very similar personalities.
Especially after everything he went through.
Wouldn't you love to just see Moody and Aberforth just getting a drink with the Hogshead, just being the old grumpy Muppets, just sitting there and complaining about everything?
Definitely make me happy.
Oh, it'd be good. And on that note, on old grumpy Muppets, we will call it an episode. We were more agreeable on this episode than we were on the previous one.
A little bit.
So if you enjoy those, I'm sorry. If you're cool with us actually agreeing, then yay. Hope you enjoyed listening to this one. Let us know your thoughts. Comment on Twitter and Instagram. We're always ready with a quick reply. We hope you enjoyed listening. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram @HogwartsAPod.